Hello, friends. Trisha Goyer here, and we're talking about another book. I'm interviewing another author, so I'm super excited to have Bryan Mitchell here. So, first of all, Bryan, welcome. And why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. I'm Bryan Mitchell. I was born in Virginia, pretty much raised in North Carolina all my life. A lot of my stories seem to exist in that part of the
Mhm.
world. But yeah, I have two boys. I've been married for 14 years, going on 15 years. It's been wonderful. Been all over the world. I was in the Army for 11 years. Part of that was Army Reserves. And yeah, it's been a journey. I've had every kind of job you can imagine. I've primed tobacco. I've worked in convenience stores. I've worked in IT. I've been a teacher. So all that stuff is ammunition for future stories.
Yeah, so it's funny how all those things kind of will show up in our books, whether it's location, whether it's situations. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about your book, Infernal Fall, and I listened to the audiobook, so I'm gonna show it. Do you have a copy of it there to hold it up? The cover is amazing. I'm gonna show it. Yes, there it is, and I have it on. I listened to it on Audible. So good. Okay, so I want to hear kind of like how would you describe the book? And then I have so much to say about it. So why don't you just give us a brief introduction to your novel?
This is a modern day revisiting of Dante's Inferno. It's not as dark as Dante's work, and it's not written poetically. It's totally prose. And I was just interested in what it would be like if someone fell down into the world he imagined in the medieval ages. What would it look like now?
Hmm. Yeah, it's so good. Okay, so many things to say. First of all, I have not read Dante's Inferno, so this was like fresh to me. But the interesting thing is because it's your main character Daniel ends up going into the many layers of hell. Now you think this would not be something that you want to spend, 8 hours reading, but I found it so interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, I remember being at a writer's retreat with my friend Francine Rivers, and which we all know, like best-selling author Francine Rivers, Redeeming Love, all these books, and we would plot each other's books, and she said, "I want to write a book about hell," and we're like, "Franny, okay, like what?" And she ended up writing the masterpiece, which one of her main characters visits hell for. I mean, it's like part of a couple chapters, but it's very brief. But she liked the idea of giving, like, you need to give people a glimpse of what the darkness is, and like to contrast the light, they need to get a glimpse of the darkness. So I'm like, okay, so the masterpiece is a great book. And then it reminds me, like your story reminded me a little bit of like a Frank Peretti type feel to it. James Rupert he narrated the audiobook. Some of his books had the same type of feel. So for those who are interested, which I hope a lot of people read this, that's the kind of feel. It's going to be like a Frank Peretti, James Rubart. It also reminded me of like a Pilgrim's Progress type of, you're going on a journey and there's all these different characters and situations. Now, in the layers of hell, there's a lot of dark characters, but the way different, greed was handled or hypocrisy was handled was super interesting to me. I was telling a friend today, we were recording a podcast and I ended up talking all about your book. And I'm like, oh, I like felt like I learned, not learned, but I saw like greed lived out or hypocrisy lived out. And so in your book, so that all those are good things. All that to say, it's a book about hell, but it's an interesting book about hell. Also reminds me of like the Screw Tape Letters because there's like lots of conversations. All that to say, why did you want to have this be the book that you wanted to write?
It's the one that came to me. One thing that's always stood out in my mind is, we are beings of light. We
Hmm.
have so much light in us, and we shine so much brighter in the darkness. And those that are in the darkness can see that we are full of light, even though we might see ourselves very dimly. We don't see ourselves as perfect by no means, and that's a good thing. It's good to be humble. Um, when we are in a dark place, we have a way of helping others just by being who we are. And while it may be scary at times, uh, we are affecting people in a positive way, especially those who are too afraid, because we're not the only ones afraid in a dark world. When I was writing the hypocrite scene, that was a moment of levity because writing in the nine circles of hell, it's a lot of, darkness, a lot of gloom, and that was the moment where I was like, "Hey, I can have some fun with this." So I kind of was thinking of, a Monty Python script when it came to that. It was just so much fun, and it gave me a breather, and that's one thing that I do realize, that when you're in a dark place, there's moments where you need breathers. When I was in Iraq, I had breathers. I wasn't constantly on my toes and panicking. Rarely did I actually panic at all. I was always, feeling, pretty confident about myself, truly, but, in any moment of doubt, we have that, but, in dark places and hard places, there's moments where, we need levity and we have time to talk and discuss and unravel the things that we, fall into.
Yeah, and so it was a mix for me of kind of like a screw tape letters or screw tape letters meets Pilgrim's Progress, but the opposite, like going into darkness instead of going through like those temptations. And it was interesting, and it was, I would say it's not like scary, like I'm gonna be afraid to go to sleep tonight. It's scary that we see people acting in this way in the world around us and realize that there's dark forces behind like some of the actions like greed or like lust or all these things that we just think like that's how man is, that's how people act. We see it lived out in TV shows and on social media, but it's like there is voices, again, the enemy has voices that are speaking darkness to people and they get to choose to follow that or not. But it is very well written, and it's even won a couple of awards to talk about that. And, what was that like to realize, like, you put this work into it? It's very different, at least to me, than a lot of, uh, Christian novels out there, and then seeing that people appreciate it, and then, for it to go on and win these awards.
Yeah, it was I was honored 'cause, the folks who were up for those awards, I was curious about them and I read their work and it was good and I enjoyed it. So I felt, wow, this was such an honor for me to, win these. Uh, but,
And before you go on, tell what award you won, 'cause,
oh,
uh
is a one for, best cover. Um, that
but
was,
it
one thing that says on here is never lose hope, because anyone who doesn't decide to, take the read, I want them at least see that, if you're in a dark place, don't lose hope. In Dante's Inferno, it's written, "All ye who enter abandon hope." And
Mhm.
that's, what the darkness would want you to do, but we don't want you to do that. Never lose hope when you're in these dark places because there is a way. There is a way. Um, one thing that the other one was, the RIM Award for horror, supernatural, and paranormal. They combined those 3 subgenres of fantasy, and it won for that. Uh, but it was a it was a crazy experience that I will always, remember, winning those awards. The process, some of the things I was thinking of while writing was, the choices we make, where we choose life or choose death, and that's something that, when we're about to fall into temptation, when we are tempted, we sometimes have this binary idea, well, should I, um, go out and drink? Should I do this or do that? We already know the answer. It's just a matter of choosing life or death. And sometimes it's hard because we want to kind of be selfish at times, and it gets to a point of pride as well. And those were some of the thoughts that were running through my mind while I was writing Infernal Fall.
Yeah, and I think when we think about, like, we just think of the choices, like, they're just a choice. We have 10 kids, we only have 4 at home. 3 are still under the age of 18, the rest are over the age of 18, and there's that time when they turn from, like, 17 to 18 when suddenly they are making choices. And it's like they've had mom and dad tell them what to do, what not to do, and they'll say, like, "Well, should I do this? Should I do that?" I'm like, "What do you think, and what do you think God wants you to do?" I can tell you all day, "Don't do this, don't do that," but it really like, there's a time I'm not gonna be around, and it has to be internal. It has to be internal motivations. It has to be you believing that God's word is true. It's you are choosing life, like you said. It's not just should I drink and not drink. Are you choosing life? Like are you choosing the right things? Are you choosing to follow God's path? Are you choosing to walk in ways that are going to bring goodness and abundance to your life? Or are you following what everyone else is doing because you don't want to look bad or whatever? So they don't like those conversations because it's like you have to make the choice for yourselves. And I know what I want you to choose, but let's look at God's word. Let's look at your internal motivations. And or even when they talk about this person did this to me, or at work coworkers, if they work in fast food or they work in some of these places, people are really mean or rude, and I'm like, they must have had a hard day. They must really have some darkness in their heart if they're going to act like that. Mom, you always say that type of thing. I'm like, I know, but you can't just look at actions. You have to look what goes deeper. And I love that um, the people in your books, the character, I can't say people because they're not all people. The characters in your books, at first you wonder, like, are there good motives? Are there bad motives? Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you think, oh, well, maybe they are good after all. Then you realize, no, they're not. But it all goes back to motives and motivations and what people's true intents are. And then even your main character, Daniel, he has some struggles from his past. He has some unforgiveness and forgiving himself. And it is, what is he going to choose? Is he going to put down that pride, or is he going to keep pushing everything away, which builds a hard heart and leads him into darkness? And so it was like the story is interesting because each scene is interesting. And then there's the internal motivations that were interesting. And then the end, for those of you that are scared it's gonna be a bad ending, I will just say there's a good positive ending. I know I don't like books that end where you're feeling like, oh, that just made me depressed. There is hope at the end. There's light at the end. I want to encourage people about that too. So as you're going through and you're thinking about how do I represent this, how did you come across? I know you talk about Dante's Inferno, but a lot of those things like having that lightness with the hypocrisy scenes. How did you really figure out how to not only have the scene played out, but those emotions and those deeper motives as you're going through the book?
It was a feel thing. It
Mhm.
was just, there's moments when I felt like, "Okay, this is what Daniel is feeling at this time. This is what is going on in Charles's mind right now," and, of course, there's Beau as well. And I had a good feel for him because I've, worked with these characters for a bit,
Mhm.
and, I just knew at times because I go into each of their POVs at
Yeah.
different points. I just had to feel like, okay, this is important to the story, and reader is going to want this information. And sometimes I didn't even know why. It's just I just knew that this was important, and then later on, I'm surprised. Like the story just reveals itself to me in such a surprising fashion. Like I have to get up and pace and think about it for a little bit and calm down and then sit back down. And I know that at those moments, I know that readers are going to be like, whoa, that's interesting. That's heavy. S- you know, that's what happens. So I just kind of feel it out. If it's too much of, too much heaviness, too much, darkness, too much, poking at something really bad, something nasty. There's a time to step away and just, like, okay, well, there's a light side to this person too. What is the other side of this person? What is combating that? Who is helping this person in dealing with this? So that those are moments where I can, go into different POVs or go into another direction with internal dialogue to just take a little breath from that. Though it's still there, it's still present in the story, but it's a way of handling it and seeing how the characters handle it.
Yeah, that's good. So there's multiple characters, multiple point of views, and I really liked that they each had a backstory that was very interesting, and their backstory was kind of revealed as they went along. In fact, in the case of Bo, he didn't even remember his backstory until as we're going along. But let's talk about Daniel because I think I don't want to give too much away. Let's like try to figure out like how to talk about these things without giving too much away. So let's talk about Daniel. He's the easiest one. He has a military background and, I think people, and you talk about you have a military background. My husband is a Marine. So there's a lot of hard things for people with a military background. There's a lot of personalities that you interact with, there's a lot of heartbreak, PTSD, there's a lot going on. And so I think it was very interesting and it made sense that the character would act in certain ways. So let's talk about how kind of your experiences played into Daniel and how his story played out.
Well, Daniel had a bad time with his father nearing his graduation in high school, which led to him leaving his home.
Mhm,
And he had some serious issues with his he felt ashamed of himself,
mhm,
but he hardened his heart to it and would not go back to his father and his mom because they were a bit hard on him. They didn't want him to go off and do what his father did. His father used to drink a lot and he became a a outspoken advocate and Alcoholics Anonymous, and so when he comes home drunk, he gets his ear full and he doesn't know how to handle it, and he winds up pushing his father down and leaving the house. And he hates that he did that, but he can't turn around and change the past, and he just feels like he should go forward. I have a great relationship with my dad, and, there's nothing like that that happened with my family, but there are things that I can look back on. I can beat myself up because 'cause we've all messed up here and there, especially when we're young. But, I don't, beat myself up or anything, but I do think, those are things I would like to teach my children how to handle better, when they're confronted with that. And, while plowing forward, going into the military, one of the reasons why I joined the military is, well, there's economical reasons, but there's also the thing where I wanted to do something that I could be proud of.
mhm,
At the time, there wasn't really many things going on in North Carolina. There was a lot of factory jobs and just basic jobs, and I've done those things. And I knew that if I joined the military, that I would be working with people who have a lot of pride, and they are going to build me up. And I will be going to different places. My first duty station was in Korea,
wow,
and I was just so excited about the adventure, and I just felt like I was going to become a man, leaving
mm,
boyhood and stop being a teenager, stop thinking of myself as invincible, and actually learn to be a man through the military. Um, and Daniel's case, he is looking for pride, but he couldn't really feel that because of what he did with his parents. And when he leaves the military, trying to find somewhere else to fit, where he finds that space that's missing, he goes to school to where he can find it in academics, and he meets a girl who he falls in love with. He wants to marry her, but still in the back of his mind, he's thinking about his parents because those things that he did, the way he left them and never went back, is still in there. But he's like, I got to keep moving forward. I can't go back there. And then he wants to propose to her on Grandfather Mountain, which is a wonderful place here in North Carolina. And when I think of Grandfather Mountain, I think of family. And I could only imagine that Daniel was thinking about his parents while he was going up the path towards
mm.
the summit where he planned to propose to her until he's lured off the path into a dark place.
Yeah, so good, and I love, yeah, it's so interesting how our background has the seeds for the story, but then it seems like the story takes over from there, and so that was definitely the case. Okay, I wanna talk about the publishing process. I think this is so interesting. So tell us, like, how this got published, a little bit about your journey, getting there.
Well, I met Descendant Publishing through, Rim Makers. I was attending Rim Makers online a few years ago, and they were accepting submissions, and so I submitted it to them, and about a couple months later, they, got back with me, and we've been very close ever since. We've been a very close partnership. Uh, I was their first acquisition, and there's someone else who just joined them. That's Tommy Michelle. Her first book just came out this month, and really, I'm just so happy for them. They're happy for me. It's just it's just wonderful. They really do take care of everything as far as getting it published. If I were to publish it myself, it would be very costly, but working with them, it brings down the cost tremendously, and they know some things that I don't know. They know a lot of things that I don't know, and when I figure out, I share with them, and they're very open and humble about whatever I have to say, which is always good. So yeah, Descendant Publishing has, really lifted it up. This cover would not be what it is without them, in fact.
Mm,
I had other ideas, and Troy was really kind. He said, "Well, what about this kind of scene?" Because I was thinking about, seeing them falling into, the pit from the top down. He liked the side view, and he
mhm.
suggested that, and even later on, I was like, "Oh, this is so good. Maybe I should take away the never lose hope because that kinda gives away the ending," and they very kindly said, "Well, think about that for a little bit," and, I got to thinking about it, and yeah, that should stay, that needs to remain. So, they help me make the better decisions, and, you have a team there, and, yeah, I love Descendant Publishing, they're good to me.
Yeah, and I love that they're a very new press, and that I think in the Christian publishing industry now, there are the same ones that we're familiar with, the same names, but then there's also a lot of small presses that are coming up. And of course, self-publishing is so much easier now than when I first started writing. My first novel came out in 2003. Like self-publishing is just a complete different thing, and it's possible for authors. But I love that these small presses are coming alongside authors. They're helping them again, giving them a platform and giving them tools and resources and knowledge to help them with their books to get like we went from nothing published to an award-winning book. That's pretty good. So I love that there is people out there in the industry. There's small publishers, there's large publishers, there's self-publishers, and I think it really is a good time for Christian industry because there's so many options, and readers just love to read. So they don't. I don't think like in the past, we would go into a bookstore, we would look at the books, we'd turn it around and see who the publisher is. Now we hear about it in different ways. We go to Amazon, we look on social media, we hear about books like in interviews like this. And it's so much different than going to a bookstore and looking to see who the publisher is on the back cover. And so I think it's cool that there is the sun is just like they're probably going to be doing more in the future. And it's cool that we know that we can get good books from them. So that's exciting.
Oh, yeah, they also have an educational, aspect to it too. They're, former teachers, just like I am, and they asked me to come up with a study guide for Infernal Fall, and they have study guides for their other books, so, yeah, they're all over it. They're
Yeah.
good folks.
Okay, so now I know there's a book 2.
Oh, yeah, it came out today.
It came out today? Okay, I didn't even know this, that it came out today. Alright,
Yeah, this is Almost Paradise,
look at
and it's
that cover. Oh my goodness.
harder to fly than to fall,
Okay.
and that's actually true. You can't just, go out there and jump off something and expect to fly. I mean, you might be able to float a little bit if you have, the proper gear, but don't go trying that at home, folks.
Right.
But, yeah, it's, when that's more like I was thinking about PTSD when I started this because
Mm,
you get out of a bad situation, sometimes it lingers with you,
mhm.
but it all came out in a fun story. This is a lot more whimsical and fun than Infernal Fall. You get a lot more of Bo's backstory in this one, and a lot of people have told me that that particular story they found heart-wrenching, which lines up with how I felt because sometimes I was though. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. I hate to do this to you, man, but you gotta do it for the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the story, it's not me, I'm just writing it. And so it was so good, the way it came out, and I was, very excited for, folks who enjoyed Infernal Fall have, so far enjoyed Almost Paradise, and they always talk about how much fun they had with Heartless Charles and how they saw Daniel grow even more, and seeing, Beau's story, heart-wrenching story is what a gut-wrenching story, that's what I've been hearing. I'm like, "Yeah, making people cry." Yeah,
You gotta
it's,
have those we have moments where they laugh, have moments where
yes,
they cry. That's the sign of a good book. So I always tell people when I'm teaching fiction workshops that fiction is to bring out emotion. Like the books that you think are boring are the ones that don't bring out emotion. So the fact that you're bringing out emotion is a good thing, whether it's laughing or crying. So that's good. And I like that the characters are continuing. Because they kinda I mean, the book you definitely feel a completion with book 1. Like, I didn't feel like it's so incomplete that I get frustrated, but I'm excited to hear more what's happening with the characters. Now, is that gonna be available as an audiobook too?
it will. I've already, gave, Jim Rubar a little nudge, but I
Alright,
haven't talked
Jim.
to him about it yet, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna text him after this. I'm like, "Hey, Jim, yeah, you gonna, narrate this next book?" He's an awesome narrator. So well, very cool. Well, congratulations on that releasing today. I didn't even know when we scheduled this that that was releasing today, so that's awesome timing.
Yeah, yeah.
Now is there gonna be more after that, or is it gonna be the 2 books?
It's gonna be a duology, but there's spinoffs that are sitting there waving at me like, "Hey,
Mm,
me next."
mm.
There's other stories that are like, "Hey, we've been waiting a while." Like,
Yeah.
"Okay, okay, guys, calm down."
I'll get to you. But that's good to know that these 2 are the duology and that because some people's like, "I don't even wanna start book 1 until I know they're complete." So by the book 2, they're gonna feel like it's complete.
Yes, yes, I really couldn't do a 3rd one because the end of book 2 is very climactic and it's pretty epic, and if I tried to top that, it would just be, too mind-blowing, I think, it's just, what I have going on there is just, too climactic for me to go any further, but the characters all go in different directions, and they seem to have trails, and I can easily, strike up new stories with them and not surprise, new readers as to their whereabouts and where they are, so that seems like a natural spin-off stories there.
That's cool. And at the end of book 1, you definitely I'm not gonna give anything away, but you definitely like, the dark forces are not gonna back down. Like, they're not backing
No.
down, so I can see how this could be interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I talked about the crying. I laughed so much while writing it too, and, I've heard other reviews, they're already on Amazon and Goodreads where there was, a lot of funny laughs too, so it's not just me. A lot of times if, writers are a fan of their own, genre, so if you find it funny, if you find it gut-wrenching, a lot of times, everybody else will too. They'll get those feels that you're feeling, so,
Very
yeah.
cool. Okay, so now they have 2 books to go read. Now one question that I love to end with as we're wrapping up is some Christian fiction that you have enjoyed. It could be recent ones, it could be old favorites, but my readers love to hear what other writers are reading.
The book that I really, really, really love that's, Christian fiction is, Tosca Iscariot. I
Oh,
mean, I really loved it, put me right there in Jesus's time, seeing the miracles performed through Judas's eyes, and that was just like, wow. I really love her style of writing too. Tosca is amazing.
he's an
So,
amazing person, and I
yeah,
have not read that one though, so I'm gonna check that out.
it's really good. She did a lot of research on that, so she paid a lot of time because that's kind of a hard thing too. Do you really wanna write a book about Judas Iscariot? But the way she did it was just amazing. I really enjoyed that story.
And Judas might or might not show up in Internal Fall. Well,
Mm.
won't say more than that, but that was an interesting surprise. Might or might not. Won't say anything. But yeah, I think I kinda just gave it away. But, Brian, where can people find more information about you and your books and then just keep up with you?
Well, I use Facebook most often. I have an Instagram. I'm on BookBub, Goodreads. You can follow me on Amazon as well. I also have a website at www.bryantimothymitchell.com. I spell my name with a Y. And even though I do that, sometimes it is spelled brain when I order at fast food,
Yeah,
and that's fine with me. I feel smart when I
yeah,
see that.
exactly.
So it's bryantimothymitchell.com. If you did join my newsletter and sent me a reply, I do respond. So, and also on Goodreads, anywhere that if you send me a message anywhere, I'll probably reply. So, yeah,
Oh,
those are the
great.
main places.
I love it. Well, are you planning to be at Real Makers next year?
Yes, I have so much fun there. It's hard to pass up anytime. I'm already, it's part of my annual budget right now. It's like,
I
yeah.
love Real Makers. Okay, so let me just say, I think I said this before, but I was gonna say, if you don't know what Real Makers is a Christian speculative fiction writers conference. Um, I think Scott was saying like I don't know, it's a large number. 60% are under the age of 40. Very young, fresh. So I'm 52. I feel very hip when I'm hanging out with all these young people. But I have never been at a conference when everyone is so fans of everyone else. Like I don't feel competition among them. They're supportive and they cheer each other on. Like when the awards are announced, it's just like all the applause and it's really cool to see I always say, like, when I talk to people in the Christian publishing industry, like being at Realm Makers gives me so much hope for the future of these writers that are coming up that are young, that have fresh ideas, that think outside the box, that are really diligent and working really hard. So if you want to write Christian speculative fiction, now I was going with my son and I wasn't even interested in writing Christian speculative fiction. And now we have a book with a steampunk historical fantasy coming out in June with Enclave. So you never know if you show up, you might end up writing speculative fiction. But yeah, it's a great conference. So I look forward to seeing you there next summer. And it was great chatting with you today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Trisha.